Jim, your report on the safety rating of football helmets worn by Long Island's high school football teams appeared last year. What prompted the investigation, and what were the findings?
You know what prompted it more than anything else was just the fact that this concussion issue is here to stay. I mean, it's just very clear that if anyone who is playing a collision sport, which obviously football is, at any level, you have to be, you have to know what's going on. And really what prompted it from the high school level was that, the kids are the ones where it really trickles down to. I mean, we've been hearing about it for, almost close to a decade now with what's going on with the NFL. It's starting to trickle down to college. Teams are changing the way they do their practices. But, in terms of high school, I mean, nowhere on any level are there more people playing football than in the high school level. And we really don't know to what degree concussions are an issue. So really that's kind of what prompted it, was just the basic question of how deep are concussions taking place on the high school level, and really how can we find it out? And really from there, it was more of a question of how can we find it out? I mean, it was the thought of, well, we can call each coach and say, how many concussions do you have? Or really, public records is really what changed it. I mean, because from a high school perspective, they're all public. We decided to put in these freedom of information requests for all concussion information from last season. It would have been the 2014-2015 school year, a year ago, and just to see how many concussions at each school. And that was the basically the impetus for it. That's what led to helmets. That led to all these different spin-offs. And really, to be perfectly honest, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if we were going to get, one concussion from across Long Island, or if we were going to get 1,000. So when they started coming back, I mean, that was interesting. The football helmets, that aspect of it, that really came about just because Virginia Tech is doing these studies. There is varying degrees of, there's experts who say it's great, and there's experts who question it, but they're the only ones doing this game right now. Virginia Tech has these bioengineer professors who are studying football helmets and saying to what degree one is better than the other at protecting against a concussion. So what we found, that going into last season, going into this past school year, there were 885 football helmets in circulation that were classified as low performers. These are basically the 1- and 2-star helmets on a 5-star scale. These are the ones that have not been produced for close to 5-6 years, and these Virginia Tech bioengineer professors said they should not be in use right now, in their opinion. Secondly, we found that at the 116 schools, with football programs, we were able to get to helmet inventories from 108 of them. We found the 885 football helmets. We also found that concussions, that there were 364 reported concussions at 88 public high schools and 2 private schools. And then there was additional 14 schools that said they had no football players suffer concussions on any of their teams, varsity, junior varsity, freshmen. Now, obviously going into it, we didn't know what to expect, but once you start seeing 364 at 88 and then you see none at 14, you start wondering what's going on. So really it was a lot of numbers being thrown out, but it was the challenge was, okay, here we got this information, let's try and make some sense of it.
Now, the 14 that said they reported that reported no concussions, is it possible that they just weren't able to detect when a player had a concussion?
That was the question was, well, why are these 14, why do they have no concussions? Is it because they are like ahead of the game in terms of they don't hit during practice, and then they've limited concussions to the point where they're not happening? Or is it that they don't have an athletic trainer on the sidelines? Is it that they're ignoring the signs? I mean, that was the challenge there. And when we spoke to experts, they said there's just really no way of knowing unless you're there. So we were able to call the schools, but they claimed, they ran the gamut. Some of them actually didn't have athletic trainers on the sidelines. And an athletic trainer is obviously someone whose main goal is the health and safety of the athletes. It's stand. It's logic. I mean, every school should have an athletic trainer on the sidelines, especially for a collision sport. It's not a rule. It's not a regulation. And some of these schools didn't. Some of the schools did, and so maybe they were doing the right thing. And also, experts said there's luck involved. I mean, the same hit could happen to the same kid. One kid could walk away, and one kid could be concussed. I mean, there's really no rhyme or reason to why that person's genetics, allowed for that hit to lead to a concussion. So really, there was no defining reason for why those 14 schools had it. It's just that experts said, the 14 number was high.
What was the most surprising thing to you that you found when you were doing the investigation?
You know what? I think the most surprising was that Virginia Tech has been testing their helmets. Every helmet that's available for high school, a high school football player is being tested by Virginia Tech. They've been doing it since 2011. I did not know they were doing it until last year, but I'm not a high school football coach or an administrator. I was surprised that I would say more than half of the high school people I spoke to did not know Virginia Tech was doing these rankings, even though they've been going to a lot of these conferences. The information's been out there. They post the ratings online. And then secondly, that, about 10% of the helmets in circulation on Long Island going into last season are these helmets that really have not been produced. They basically stopped producing these helmets once the Virginia Tech ratings came out, because the industry, the manufacturers said, we can't, produce a helmet that's a one-star helmet that even if we disagree with this rating system, it's a one-star helmet. It's being rated as the worst on this scale. How can we redo this? So they took them off the production line almost immediately, within months from the ratings being released in 2011. Yet, because there's this rule with helmets that they stay in circulation for 10 years, they have a 10-year lifespan. Essentially they could still be being worn. So that one-star helmet, if it was produced in 2011, could still be worn in 2021 by the helmet manufacturers' laws. So essentially, I guess I was just surprised that so many of those were still being used, and it obviously is not something that made people feel good.
Now, in the film Concussion with Will Smith, that's in the theaters now, the person that Will Smith portrays, Dr. Amalu, he did research into concussions suffered by players in the NFL. And he did a report based on his research. And it was not received very well by the National Football League at all. How did the coaches, athletic administrators, and parents on Long Island react to your report?
Great question. As I was doing the reporting, there definitely was a sense of what are you going after and what's your motivation. I every time I told them I'm just interested to know the numbers of concussions, and I'm just interested to know, and I was very upfront about I'm getting helmet inventories from each school, looking to see how they rated on this Virginia Tech scale. There was, questions about that. I mean, and I guess to some degree, I haven't dealt with a lot of these people before. They were skeptical about where I was going with it, even though I tried to be as clear as I could. Afterwards, and I guess the biggest change, or the biggest reaction, actually came in the weeks before we were about to publish this. So we published this beginning of October. I would say the first real response came at the end of August, when Miller Place decided that they were going to take out all their low-rated helmets and replace them before they were, their season even began, and that was in response to our just asking questions. I mean, I didn't ask them to do that. I didn't, bring that up as an option. I just asked for the helmet inventory, and they figured and I told them why, and then they responded by saying, hey, we're going to just, get ahead of this. We're going to get these helmets off, and we're going to, get higher-rated helmets. That really spurred, that really took off. The steam really picked up on that. I would say, mid-September up until the publication date, where basically schools were reaching out to us and saying, we're going to get, new helmets. We want to replace these helmets. It almost was hard to keep track of how quickly it was happening. I had to, reach out and double check and ask for, each school that was doing this. I asked for their receipts just to have proof of this, to update their their records, and that was the biggest reaction, just in the sense where they realized that, hey, this is a legitimate study, and we need to react to this. We can't be sending our kids out. Whether or not a 5-star helmet is 10 times better than a 1-star helmet, or if it's 2 times better than a 1-star helmet, these bioengineer professors are saying that it's better. It better protects our kids. We need to upgrade. So essentially, that happened. I would say more than half the schools that had 1-star helmets. It happened in the weeks before, even until the day before we actually went to the print. The Sewanega School District gave us, a receipt that showed they had bought something like 100. I think it was 160 5-star helmets. They spent something like $36,000 on helmets just the day before we went to print. And it could be, people could say it's for public relations concerns. They didn't want to look bad, but at the end of the day, they got what's rated as better helmets, and that was really the reaction. And then, in response to the story, same thing just continued to happen, where schools were going out and buying better helmets.
There was reaction, though. I got a sense from reading your article that there were some reactions like, well, this is being overstated. This is football. That's the way it goes. That's the way football. That's what football players have to accept as part of the game. I mean, that was in the movie, and I got a sense that there may have been 1 or 2 coaches that you reported on that had somewhat the same attitude.
Yeah, and you know what? That attitude obviously was very prevalent 20 years ago. It was starting to go away, probably like 07, 08, when when the CTE stuff and the NFL was just starting to break through, and it is going away now. But you're right, it is still there. I still heard it. Not as many, not too many. I mean, there were more coaches in the opposite. More coaches stressed the positives of keeping the head out of the game, and just all along that there was a concept of we need to do better. I definitely got that impression. But that being said, there are definitely coaches out there who felt that this is being overstated, who felt that concussions is being overstated, and felt that the helmet investigation or examination was barking down the wrong tree in that regard. So it was. It was interesting to see the gamut of reactions that we got, and that thinking still exists.
Now, football is a smash mouth sport. I mean, coaches, as much as they want to talk about safety and the welfare of their players on the field, they're still basically promoting hitting them hard and hitting them often. Is a 5-star helmet going to be able to protect a young athlete who engages in a helmet-to-helmet hit at like 15 miles an hour?
Yeah, and that is a great question, and that's where the helmet ratings are criticized, because there are experts out there that say the helmet ratings actually hurt the concussion awareness, because they say that a person's going to put on a 5-star helmet and say, you know what, I have the best available equipment on me. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to, I'm not worried about concussions. When experts are saying, regardless of what you have in your head, you need to protect your head. You can't rely on the helmet to protect your head. You need to protect it. You need to not hit with your head. You need to try not to be hit in the head to the best of your abilities. A 5-star helmet, from what the Virginia Tech people say, will do a better job of protecting you than the 1-star helmet. But it's not, there are going to be hits that are going to cause a concussion regardless of what you have on your head. And frankly, there's been a push recently for helmetless practices. There are experts out there that say kids should be practicing, not in games, but practicing without helmets, because what better way to protect your head than to not have anything on it, because you're not going to hit with your head, and you're not going to want to be hit with your head without anything on it. They're saying the helmet actually plays a bad role in it, because you think, okay, I got the helmet on, I can get hit in the head, when really every hit to the head has a potential for causing concussion. So while there's definitely a consensus out there, at least among the brain experts, that helmets and a 5-star helmet will protect your head better than the 1-star helmet, there is definitely a thought process that how much does it help, and is it hurting the mentality of when you go up there and what what the players are thinking, whether it's a kid or a football player, NFL player, when they go on the field? Because in no way should you be thinking that you should be going out there and wanting to hit with your head or wanting to get hit with your head or feeling like it's okay to be hit in the head, because that will always have the possibility of long-term damage or a concussion.
PBS did an extensive documentary titled League of Denial, which was about concussions in the NFL. And Dr. Amalu was a significant part of that documentary. And he relates a story whereby one of his colleagues said to him, "Do you know what the implications of your research is or claims?" And Dr. Amalu said, "No, tell me." And he said, "If only 10% of the mothers in America took this research to heart and said, my son is not going to play football, that would be the end of football in America." Is football on the verge of extinction because of the concussion stories now and other stories like it?
You know what? It's a fascinating question, and I mean, you can't understate. I mean, you pulled out the exchange that essentially is why we're here today. You know, how we got here today. Like, there's no understating the importance of what Dr. Amalu found that day. Now, would someone else have stumbled upon it? Probably. But we are here there today in 2016 talking about this because of what happened that day, and that was, a decade ago. Who knows how much longer it would have taken to get to this point. But I mean, we're here, and we're still not even at the point of completely understanding the depths of it. In terms of football, in terms of where football is going to be, you know what? The bottom line is there's not one high school football team on Long Island that stopped, its program because of concerns over head trauma. If that's going to happen, it's going to start at the youth levels, like you said. It's going to start with the young kids, because the parents are the ones playing the major role in it. For they're looking out for the health and safety of their kids. And last year, Oyster Bay High School, the Board of Ed had a discussion at the Board of Ed about whether to cancel football. And and Oyster Bay is not exactly a football hotbed. They've not had a winning program. They've been competitive in years, but I mean, it hasn't been the best of runs for them. And they had a turnout that was positive. I mean, their turnout was, we want to keep football. And there was a doctor on the Board of Ed who really pushed for them to cancel it, citing safety concerns. And he considers himself having failed that day, because he went in with the intent in that meeting to have them cancel the program. And in exchange for essentially not canceling it, they decided to spend a significant amount of money on new helmets with sensors that basically say, this kid just took a hit over a certain threshold of force, and you should go check him out. It doesn't say he had a concussion. It doesn't have anything like that. It just says, he got a significant hit. You might not have seen it. Go check him out. And maybe that's where we're going. Right now, people clearly don't want football to end. Football's the most popular game in America. I mean, there's definitely, if it's going to end, if the point that you're mentioning, if we get to that point, it's not going to be 2016, 2017, 2018. It's going to be a long time away. But we're on a road right now where we don't know where it's leading, and maybe it's going that way. I mean, we certainly didn't know we were going to head this way back when Dr. Amalu found this.
If you had a son, Jim, I know you have two beautiful daughters. If you had a son who wanted to play high school football, after your investigation, after all the research that you did, what would you tell him?
I've been asked that question a lot. I've been asked that question a lot since this. I was working on this for 7 months. I think we started in May, so it's been a while where this has been the central focus of my work days. And friends, readers, people in the office. I get that question a lot, and my answer is always that, honestly, I can't answer that because I'm not in that situation. Like that, it's easy for me to say, no, I won't have them play because I don't have sons. Or ease me to say that, yes, let's have them play. But because I'm not in that situation, I don't know how much you're going to grapple with that because, I mean, who wants to tell their sons no? I mean, who wants to, obviously you're looking out for their safety and you want them to be safe, but, I mean, if your, 12-year-old son is gung-ho about football, I mean, I'm sure it's very hard for parents to say, you know what, we can watch it on Sundays, you can watch all your friends do it, but you know what, I'm worried about your brain, you can't do it. Now, there's nothing wrong with saying that, obviously, but I realize what goes into that. So, you know what, I think my takeaway from talking to people, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this in the last year or so, my takeaway is that is such an individual decision, and it's so easy to say yes, but it's got to be so hard to actually do it.